Assassin's Creed is a franchise that needs no introductions. But despite the name, you don't typically spend much time in these games actually acting like an assassin. At least you don't if you play these games like I usually do. The way and I think most people usually play these games is to forego the preparation and stealth that you'd expect from an assassin in any other game, and run in killing hordes of guards with all manner of swords, knives, and other historic weaponry. But what if you didn't play this way? Today we're going to be answering the question, can you beat Assassin's Creed while acting like an assassin? So what does this challenge run actually entail? Well, for starters, I'm only going to be using the assassin's signature weapon, the Hidden Blade, except in places where the game forces me to use other weapons. More on that later. Next, we'll be acting in accordance with the Creed and Al-Mualim's teachings as they're spelled out in the beginning of the game. The first tenet is to stay your blade from the flesh of the innocent. So, no killing innocents, which sounds easy, but gets harder the longer you have to listen to the insufferable beggar NPCs. The second two tenets, hide in plain sight and never compromise the Brotherhood, are a little harder to translate into gameplay terms. I decided that it meant being exposed was a no-no. The exposed state happens when enemies are actively hostile and have a line of sight on Altair, and is indicated by the Abstergo symbol flashing red. So I'll be doing this run while being as exposed as few times as possible. I was initially going to make this a damageless run as well, but very quickly realized that trying to do a damageless run of a parkour action game with super finicky controls that I played once 10 years ago was an awful idea, so I didn't do that. With that out of the way, we can start the run. The intro section goes the same way it does in a normal playthrough. Just watch a cutscene, then do some parkour. Altair does straight up murder some random dude who was 100% an innocent bystander, but it happens in a cutscene, so doesn't count. After a brief assassination tutorial, we watch a completely normal cutscene with nothing whatsoever out of the ordinary. And Altair uses his singular brain cell to try to murder a knight and then bail on his team, which goes about as well as you'd think. We go back to Masyaf, the home base of the Assassin Order, to report back to Al-Mualim, the leader of the assassins, who's less than pleased with us. His displeased lecture is cut short by an invasion of the compound by Robert de Sable. At this point, I was still thinking that this would be a damageless run in addition to the other rules. Combat, while restricted to only using the Hidden Blade, is actually pretty simple. The Hidden Blade is an instant kill for every enemy in the game. It's just a matter of actually making contact. Just trying to attack an enemy with it will result in Altair getting awkwardly shoved away, so you have to wait until you're attacked and then counterattack to deal out instant death with a pretty sick animation. You're also able to assassinate enemies during combat if they start cowering, try to taunt you, or stop to stare at a bird. I'm dead serious about that last one. Sometimes enemies just stop mid-fight to stare up into the sky for like 30 seconds. I only realized that these assassinations were an option towards the end of the game though, so mostly you'll be seeing some of the tightest timing I've ever played in a video game. And I've played Sekiro. Seriously, the window for the counterattacks with the Hidden Blade in this game is absurdly short. And if the enemy decides to do a heavy attack, you better hope you've got a fair bit of health, because you're just eating that damage. There are some weird upsides to playing the game like this that make combat doable, if long and tedious. First, since you have to wait for enemies to attack you to do a counterattack, there are often long stretches during fights where you're all just kind of standing around staring at each other, during which I was often able to get back some health segments. Secondly, since the Hidden Blade is an instant kill, boss fights where you actually need to fight the boss are pretty much trivialized. After around half an hour of trying to get through this one area without taking any damage, I realized that adding the damageless rule to this run was fucking stupid and just counterattacked my way to the end of the combat section. Then, after some cutscenes and parkour, I drop some sticks on the bad guys, then get shanked by the Granddaddy Assassin for screwing up the cave mission at the very start of the game. There's a quick interlude for the modern day story to get going, but it's boring and doesn't matter for this challenge, so I'll be completely ignoring it. Back in the interesting storyline, Altair isn't dead. Well, that's weird. Almost as if that whole stabbing thing was an illusion or something. Eh? We get stripped of most of our weapons and abilities, including the ability to counterattack, which will become an issue in a bit, and I get tasked with finding out who the traitor is among the assassins that led the attack. This is basically a tutorial for the side objectives. These are small tasks for you to get intel on your assassination target. Most can be completed as normal, but the interrogation missions require you to beat up a guy until he talks, which clearly violates the Hidden Blade only rule. The interrogation mission here is required, marking the first time the game forces you to use a weapon other than the Hidden Blade. After finding and turning in the turncoat, Altair is rewarded with a sword and the Hidden Blade, but not the ability to counterattack. This is still an issue. He's sent off to start his murder spree that will take up most of the rest of the game. The kingdom is this weird, kind of pointless area that you have to ride through to get to the actual cities where the assassinations take place. Even the game seems to realize that they suck, because after you've ridden through it to get to each city once, you're able to just fast travel back and forth. There's one time towards the end of the game where this area actually presents a challenge, but for the most part you just need to not sprint directly into the Templar patrols to get through it. The first assassination takes place in Damascus, and before I even get into the city, I reach the second and final time I use a weapon other than the Hidden Blade. You have to save the Scholar to get into Damascus. This is the only civilian we'll be saving for the entire run, because going into combat like this forces you into the exposed state. Not having the counterattack ability leaves me with no way to actually damage these guys, and there's a whole bunch of not-so-invisible walls keeping me from breaking line of sight, hiding, and then picking them off one by one. I went back and tried to abuse the enemy AI after I'd beaten the game, hence the bigger health bar here. And despite trying for about 20 minutes, these guards never broke their concentration for long enough for me to get an assassination in. While it should be possible to kill 2 out of the 3 guards by getting them to damage each other, that would take forever and still leave one enemy that I'd have no way to damage. So I took them out with a sword and blended in with the Scholar for the first and only time of this run. Once inside the cities, before each assassination, you're required to do at least 2 side missions. I made a rule for myself that I do all the side missions that didn't break any of my other rules, and while this did make for some more strategic assassinations, the side missions themselves are incredibly tedious and mostly not any different from a normal playthrough, so I won't be discussing them. The only real differences are that I can't do interrogation missions, merchant stall destruction missions, and some of the escort missions because they either require other weapons or are too RNG dependent to reasonably do while remaining undetected. So just know that whenever you see a map or a letter on the screen, I got that by completing a side mission. Now, the actual assassination. After dropping down into this little marketplace and seeing why we don't need to feel guilty about murdering this man, you can basically just walk up and stab him. Now, here's why this run is minimally exposed instead of never exposed. Because pretty much all these assassinations are structured in a way that forces you into an exposed state either immediately before or after the target's assassinated. So I run around, find a place to hide until I'm no longer exposed, and then carefully make my way back to the Assassin's Bureau to complete the mission. After assassinations, the city goes on high alert, and the guards will aggro instantly if they see you doing anything even slightly sketchy. But as long as you take things a little bit slow and keep your eyes out for rooftop guards, you'll be fine. Returning back to Masyaf to report our progress, I get a pat on the back from Al-Mualim, a pretty sweet knife, and the ability to counterkill. Finally, combat options for the Hidden Blade. While I will have to return here after each assassination for more plot exposition, this is the only meaningful upgrade I get for this run, so I'm not going to bother mentioning these bits from now on. Next up is getting into Acre. Luckily, I can just parkour my way in and completely avoid any combat shenanigans, and get right to learning about our target, Garnier, Doctor and Grandmaster of the Knights Hospitalier. I learned that there should be some guards absent from the roof, which will be my entry point. Once I'm inside, there are chandeliers that can be walked across to get around the area undetected. I tried using the chandeliers, and while they didn't offer any good ways to get to the target, there is a busted out window up here that'll make for a good escape route. The actual assassination is a little trickier this time around. While Garnier is tending to his patients, he can't be reached without alerting him or the guards. That leaves him only open to attack while he's walking between them. With just a little bit of patience, I'm able to carry out the second assassination, then immediately get surrounded and ganked while trying to run away, which sends me back to the checkpoint. After I've killed Garnier, but not exposed? I mean, I'll take it, I guess. Hopping out the broken window I spotted earlier, I head back to the bureau to finish the mission. Now it's off to Jerusalem to kill Talal. Like Acre, this city can be parkoured into without issue, and from here on out, I'll be able to just fast travel straight to the Assassin's Bureau to start missions. From my info gathering, I learned that Talal's whole deal is that if I'm detected, his followers will try to stop me while he escapes. So we just need to not be detected, which was the plan anyways. Using a map of guard locations I got earlier, I pick off a few of them on my way to the warehouse where Talal is hiding, and walk straight into a trap. I'm thrown into a combat encounter, which I counter-kill my way through with relative ease, then chase Talal down through the streets, and kill him when he spins around and runs directly into my hidden blade. Now it's time to get into Memory Block 4. We'll have to go back to each of the 3 cities for another round of assassinations. Start with Abul in Damascus for no other reason than it's first on the fast travel list. This is the first real challenge of the run. Getting into the palace where the party's taking place is simple enough. I just take out a couple of the nearby rooftop guards and cleanly hop the outer fence, then walk through the main doors. There is a climbable statue in the center of the courtyard that I could use to get to the target, but the map of guard positions tell me that I'll be better off climbing up in this little alcove over here, then making my way along the balconies. After the cutscene, all hell breaks loose, and things get a lot more interesting. The archers on the upper level are too busy murdering civilians to notice Altair, cool guy walking through the chaos, but go any faster than a light jog and they'll instantly start peppering you with arrows. Getting up to the second level is a bit of an issue. The back corner where I initially planned to get up does seem like the best spot, but there are some complications. Mostly this guy here in the corner. As soon as I touched the upper level, he'd put me in the yellow flashing state, which technically isn't exposed. I went through frame by frame, and not once does it go into the red. It seems like he just automatically goes into the searching state if you approach from this way, but he just kinda stood there. So I was able to shimmy along and climb up outside of his field of vision. Once on the upper level, I just casually walked around the balconies, stabbing all the archers. Now, the only 2 guards remaining are the ones directly next to the target. It's times like these when you really feel the absence of the throwing knives. There's no good way to take out the guards and remain undetected, so I figured the better option for my time and sanity would be to just focus on the target, and luckily the guards do just let me run up and shank their boss without putting up a fuss. And I mean, it was gonna put me in the exposed state after I killed him anyways, so what's the harm in having a couple extra witnesses? My plan was to run out the back and hide in a rooftop garden that I spotted on my way into the palace. Things did not go to plan. I thought maybe the roof of the palace would offer a better escape route with less guards. There certainly were less guards, but getting back down from the roof made Altair look pretty far from the graceful, deadly assassin he's supposed to be. With assassination number 4 dealt with, I fast traveled to Acre to get started on assassination number 5. William de Montferrat is camped out in a large military compound at the south end of the map. There's some conveniently located scaffolding on one of the outer walls of the compound, giving me a clear view of William's little spat with King Richard, then an easy route to the roofs of the compound. Getting over to where William's hanging out isn't too difficult, just a matter of going along this outer wall, killing or sneaking past guards when necessary. After a brief scene where William has 2 of his men killed for drinking on the job, all the guards leave the area, and I'm free to climb down and kill him. The only thing to watch out for during this mission is that if you drop down from slightly too high, every guard in the area will hear the pitter-patter of your little assassin feet and come and kill you. Dropping down from here is fine though. Then you can just kill him and run away to find someplace to hide. And now I'm off to Jerusalem. Mujahideen is the current regent of Jerusalem, and he's going to be holding an execution today. One of the people being executed is a fellow assassin who got caught. So not only do we have to stealth assassinate this guy, but we also have to do it fast enough to save our fellow assassin. This is pretty easy to do. After his monologue, we can just walk into this alleyway, climb up onto this building, kill this guy, wait till he turns around, then climb down the ladder and shank the bastard. All in all, pretty simple assassination. And that brings us to the last batch of assassinations, starting with Damascus, to find and kill Jubair, the book burner. This is the main mission where the side objectives actually make things significantly easier. After his introductory cutscene, Jubair leaves with 5 other book burners dressed exactly like him. Each of the targets go to a different location marked on your map. With the intel gathered from side objectives, I was able to narrow down the true Jubair's location to one of these 2 spots. At the first location I tried, I pulled a move that was 100% an intentional strategic decision, and not a dumb mistake that very nearly got me detected, by dropping a corpse near one of the potential target. This revealed it to be one of the lookalikes, so there's only one place Jubair can be. After taking out the rooftop guards, I slide down the ladders and take out the target. And now it's on to action. This time we're killing Sabrand, who's apparently been murdering scholars because they wear similar robes as Assassin. I feel like this whole deal makes a bit more sense in a normal playthrough where you actually use the blending mechanic with the scholars fairly frequently. After the cutscene, Sabrand goes out on his boats on the docks. I received a helpful tip that the northern docks don't have any guards on them, so that's my route. The assassination itself is actually very easy. I just parkoured my way over there, climbed on the boat, and stabbed Sabrand when he turned away from me. Despite how easy that is on paper, it took me like 10 attempts because of how fucking finicky the jumping controls are, because I kept launching Altair into the water of instant death. Now it's time for the final assassination mission of the game, to finally go after Robert de Saab, that one asshole from the beginning of the game. He's here to attend the funeral of Mujahideen, one of our previous targets. The funeral is public and should be unguarded, though the same can't be said for Robert himself, so I can just walk in the front gate and oh no, it's a trap! Again! This is just a big combat encounter, so I hang out in this group of enemies until the target tries to attack me and I can counter-kill him. Or her, as it turns out. Robert sent a double in his place, and Altair is shocked to find that that double is a woman. Not gonna make a comment about that because the game is set in the 1100s, so, fair enough, I guess. Altair lets the double live in exchange for her telling him where the real Robert is. So now I need to get out of the city into Arsuf, where Robert is taking part in some big battle. Remember where I said that there's only one part in the kingdom that was worth talking about? Yeah, this is that part. I have to go through the kingdom one last time to get Arsuf, and I have to either go through one of these heavily guarded checkpoints that I'm pretty sure are actually impossible to get through undetected, or this heavily guarded but much larger ruined structure. Just getting up to this place is a beast in and of itself. There are eagle-eyed archers posted up that'll start firing if you so much as think about approaching them. After a lot of trial and error, I was able to make my way into the ruins by dropping off this ledge and slowly making my way over to this little alleyway over here. In the more central parts of the ruins, the guards are spaced out far enough away from each other that they can just be assassinated one by one without it being a big issue. Exiting the ruins also requires some stealthy timing because this dude up here will spot you climbing out if he's facing you, and there's a second guard just out of sight up there who will spot you if you try to pop up there to kill him. Then you just have to assassinate this last guard. I said you have to assassinate this last guard. Thank you. Now, hugging the canyon wall out of the area, I'm home free. Our SOOF is a series of combat encounters, so I'll be exposed for a good chunk of this area, and there's nothing I can really do about it. There isn't a whole lot to say about this part. There aren't any special tricks, it's just a matter of learning the timing to counterkill enemies one at a time. It takes a while, but is pretty straightforward. Just wait after each encounter to regenerate your health, and then sit in the middle of a horde of angry men and wait for your chance to strike. Took me about half an hour to make it through the area like this. And then OBS crapped out on me during the boss fight, which I did not realize until after I had already killed Robert, so I had to do that whole thing again. When you get to Robert, King Richard says that you'll settle this in single combat, which Robert agrees to, then immediately sends out a horde of goons to go kill you, and that is not how single combat works, you goddamn coward. Although, I can't honestly say that I blame him, because after Robert himself steps up to fight me, he goes down in less than a minute, because Hidden Blade counterkills are a little bit OP against bosses. Now we can return to Masyaf one final time to finish this once and for all, because, turns out, surprise surprise, the sketchy old guy who stabbed the main character at the start of the game is actually the bad guy. All the townsfolk in Masyaf just kind of stand around and stare at you and occasionally spout some cryptic nonsense, which isn't a great sign of things to come. A little further up the path are a group of assassins that are hypnotized? Brainwashed? Under the influence of the magical sci-fi relic MacGuffin. They try to murder me, and they succeed, and then they don't. Once inside the assassin's headquarters building, the gate slams shut behind me, and wow, look at all those meat shields. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I've only played this game once before, and that was like 10 years ago. And I remembered this final boss fight being a lot harder. Like, I could have sworn that he uses the apple to shoot laser beams at Altair or something like that. He doesn't. He paralyzes Altair long enough to deliver his villainous monologue, then disguises some assassins to look like Altair's previous targets, who all attack him at once, which is admittedly a pretty cool concept for a boss fight. But it's basically just a normal combat encounter. Once all 9 are dead, Al-Mualim himself comes down to fight us and creates shadow clones of himself to fight us as well. I'm not sure if it's just a matter of killing a certain number of the clones, or if there's a specific one you have to take out before the next phase begins. Not that it really matters, because I don't have a huge amount of say in who I deal damage to in big fights like this. But after a few slick counterkills, another cutscene plays out, and then he tries to kill me one more time in single combat. It's over quickly. And that's the game. I mean, there's some more modern day nonsense before the credits roll, but for our purposes, the game's over. So, can you beat Assassin's Creed while acting like an assassin? Kind of. I had to either break my rules or make them sort of hand-wavy to begin with, but overall a stealth-oriented, weapon-restricted gameplay style fits this game remarkably well. That's gonna do it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time with a new challenge run.